Welcome to Beyond, a channel where we go past headlines, past myths, and past comfort, into the moments that reshaped human history forever. This is not just a story about an explosion. This is a story about power, secrecy, human error, and a single decision that still echoes across the world. What you're about to hear is one of the most chilling true events ever recorded, and once you understand it, you'll never look at nuclear power or human confidence the same way again. On April 26, 1986, at exactly 1:23 in the morning, a single button was pressed in a control room filled with exhausted men and rising panic. That button was meant to save everything. Instead, it unleashed the worst nuclear disaster humanity has ever known. In seconds, an entire city was doomed, tens of thousands of people lost their homes. Invisible radiation began a slow and merciless countdown inside human bodies, and a quiet industrial facility turned into a radioactive nightmare that still threatens the planet today. A steel lid weighing nearly 1,000 tons was hurled into the air, as if gravity had momentarily given up, and a nuclear reactor was ripped open, exposing forces never meant to touch the open world. This was the catastrophe of Reactor Number 4. But the explosion itself is only the surface of the story. The real horror lies in what led up to that moment. A terrifying chain of arrogance, secrecy, flawed design, and pressure that transformed a routine safety test into a global warning written in fire and radiation. The roots of this disaster go back decades, born from a world obsessed with power and dominance. After World War II ended, a new kind of war began, one without bullets, fought with technology, intelligence, and ideology. Nations raced to outbuild, outthink, and outshine one another. Nuclear energy became more than electricity. It became a symbol of superiority. Bigger reactors meant greater prestige. Faster construction meant progress. Safety quietly became negotiable. To meet ambitious goals, systems were rushed, warnings were ignored, and design weaknesses were buried under layers of bureaucracy and silence. The reactor at the center of this story was massive, powerful, and unlike anything used elsewhere. It was efficient, impressive, and deeply unstable under the wrong conditions. And most of the people operating it were never fully told just how dangerous it could become. At its core, a nuclear reactor is simply a complex way to boil water. Heat turns water into steam, steam spins turbines, turbines create electricity. But instead of burning fuel, nuclear reactors split atoms. When certain atoms break apart, they release enormous energy, and more particles that continue the reaction. Control is everything. Too little reaction and the system dies. Too much and it becomes uncontrollable. To manage this balance, reactors use control rods that absorb these particles and slow everything down. The reactor involved in this disaster used a design where the very components meant to stop the reaction could briefly make it worse. That flaw was known, it was documented, and it was never fixed. On the night of the accident, operators were preparing for a safety experiment, ironically meant to prevent a meltdown during a power outage. But delays pushed the test into the late hours, with a tired and less experienced crew. As they lowered the reactor's power, a mistake caused it to drop dangerously low. At that level, the reactor became unstable. Instead of shutting everything down, pressure from above pushed the team to continue. Safety systems were disabled. Control rods were removed far beyond safe limits. The reactor was no longer under control. It was being forced to operate in a state it was never designed to survive. When the test finally began, everything unraveled at once. Cooling slowed, steam formed, power surged. The reactor began accelerating instead of stabilizing. Realizing the danger, the supervisor ordered an emergency shutdown. That's when the final trap was sprung. As the control rods dropped, their flawed design caused a sudden spike in reactivity instead of stopping it. In less than a second, power levels skyrocketed to unimaginable heights. The cooling water instantly flashed into steam, triggering a massive explosion that tore the reactor apart. Moments later, another blast sent radioactive material into the atmosphere, igniting fires and exposing the open core to the night sky. What followed was chaos. Emergency crews arrived believing they were fighting a normal fire. They had no idea they were standing on fragments of a nuclear reactor, breathing air thick with lethal radiation. Some handled glowing debris with bare hands, unaware that minutes of exposure meant certain death. These first responders prevented the flames from spreading further, but at an unimaginable personal cost. Many were gone within weeks, their bodies destroyed from the inside out. Yet the danger wasn't over. Beneath the destroyed reactor lay vast amounts of water. Above it, molten radioactive material was burning through concrete. If the two met, a second explosion could have been catastrophic on a continental scale. 3 men volunteered to stop it. They entered the flooded darkness, guided by failing lights and screaming radiation detectors, knowing they might not return. Against impossible odds, they succeeded. A second apocalypse was narrowly avoided. The cleanup that followed pushed human endurance to its limits. Machines failed under intense radiation, so people were sent instead. For seconds at a time, workers ran across radioactive rooftops, shoveling deadly debris before being pulled back. Thousands were exposed. Many paid with their health. Entire cities were evacuated. Homes, schools, and amusement parks were abandoned overnight, left frozen in time. The truth spread across the world only after radiation was detected far beyond the disaster zone, carried by the wind itself. Today, the reactor is sealed beneath layers of steel and concrete, but the danger remains. Deep inside lies a solidified mass of radioactive material so toxic it will remain deadly for thousands of years. Nature has reclaimed the surrounding land. Forests grow, animals roam, but the silence hides a permanent scar. The true death toll may never be known. What is certain is that the disaster reshaped energy policy, public trust, and global awareness forever. Chernobyl is not just a story of technology gone wrong. It is a story about human systems that ignored warnings, silenced experts, and believed control was absolute. It reminds us that the most dangerous failures don't begin with explosions. They begin with small compromises. And the button pressed at 1:23 a.m. didn't just destroy a reactor. It shattered the belief that humanity always knows how to control the power it creates. This is Beyond, and some stories don't stay buried.